Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, entitled The Status Quo. Chapter 16, Jaya and Vijaya cursed by the sages. Text 27. Brahmo vacha atate munayo drushtva nayanananda bhajanam vaikuntham tadadhishthanam vikuntham cha swayam prabham. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. Lord Brahma said, after seeing the Lord of Vaikuntha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the self-illuminated Vaikuntha planet, the sages left that transcendental abode. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The transcendental abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and confirmed in this verse, is self-illuminated. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in the spiritual world, there is no need of sun, moon or electricity. This indicates that all the planets there are self-illuminated, self-sufficient and independent. Everything there is complete. Lord Krishna says that once one goes to that Vaikuntha planet, he never returns. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha never return to the material world, but the incident of Jaya and Vijaya was a different case. They came to the material world for some time and then they returned to Vaikuntha. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So Lord Brahma is speaking to the demigods who have gone to Lord Brahma to inquire why there is suddenly so much of darkness spreading everywhere in the universe. So Brahma has explained the reason for that darkness to spread everywhere. It is because the two doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jaya and Vijaya, being cursed by the sages, the four Kumaras, had to take birth in this material world. And as is explained in the previous verse, this was the plan of the Lord. Actually, everything is going on according to the plan of the Supreme Lord only. But we cannot always see the hand of the Lord in all such activities that are actually going on according to the plan of the Lord. To be able to see the hand of the Lord in everything requires spiritual understanding of the situation. The Kumaras were fortunate to actually go to the spiritual abode of the Supreme Lord because they were situated in Brahman realization. They had no attraction for anything material. So even the Brahmaloka, what to speak of the other planets, heavenly planets, was not attractive to the Kumaras. That is the position of self-realization that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. A self-realized soul is not attracted by anything in this material world. But the Kumaras, as is described here, atate munayo drishtva nayanananda bhajanam. They had experienced in that Vaikuntha planet, after seeing the Lord of Vaikuntha, the Supreme Lord, nayanananda bhajanam. They experienced pleasure by that sight of the Supreme Lord and the Vaikuntha planet itself. So this pleasure is different from the pleasure we experience in this material world. So this difference in the pleasure is not just simply another variety. This pleasure is of a different quality. Just like it is said here, Vaikuntham tadadishthanam. Vaikuntham, the Vaikuntha planet, is the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tadadishthanam. It is His personal abode, the Lord's personal abode. Because every planet belongs to the Lord, everything is His. But He still has His personal abode. And that personal abode is different in quality from all other planets. So one of the characteristics of that personal abode of the Supreme Lord is Swayam Prabham. It is self-illuminated. In contrast to that, every planet in this material world is dark by nature, and it requires illumination, either by the sun or the moon or fire or electricity. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Natad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha, describing his abode. In the 15th chapter, Krishna describes this material world as a reflection of the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, which is actually the personal abode of the Supreme Lord, there is no need of illumination for the planets in that spiritual world. And in the material world, every planet requires illumination. So all the planets here are either illuminated by the sun or moon or by the fire or electricity. Some illumination is required. So self-illuminated means always there is light. So if in the spiritual world always there is light, so somebody asked me the question some time back, that means there is no day and night, always it is day. It is so uninteresting, so boring. But the fact is that there is day and night. You would have read in the pastimes of Krishna. Of course, those pastimes that are described in 10th canto are the pastime that Krishna displayed in this world. But still, even in Krishna's personal abode, there is day and night. So how is night possible in the spiritual world? If it is always illuminated by the self-luminous planets. Actually, the illumination is due to the effulgence of the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord. That's the original source of all light. That's also called Brahma Jyoti. Even the sun, which looks like a self-luminous planet, is deriving the light energy from the Brahma Jyoti. So, Krishna's bodily effulgence is the original source of all light. So how is it possible that in Krishna's abode there is day and night? Day we can understand because of the effulgence coming from Krishna's body. So this is difficult to understand because in our conception in the material world, day and night are two opposites. We say night because there is no light of the sun. So in the absence of light, there is something called night. But such conceptions of opposites or duality don't exist in the spiritual world. In the material world, the absence of good, there is evil. Or the absence of light, there is darkness. So, the spiritual world, there is no darkness. There is no evil. So, spiritual world is characteristically devoid of all dvandva, all dualities, all opposites, like in the material world. But still there is spiritual variety. That spiritual variety is different than material variety. Material variety is produced by dvandva. Spiritual variety is produced by the internal potency of Krishna called Yogamaya. Yogamaya produces all the variety required for Krishna's pastimes. So in the spiritual world there is no need of even time. Just like in the material world, there is time factor. The movement of the sun produces the effect of time elapsing. Just like day and night means duration. Some definite amount of duration. So according to the distance of a particular planet from the sun and according to the speed at which the sun is moving in its orbit, relative speed, there are different durations of day and night on different planets. But such a concept of time does not exist on the spiritual planets. Nimeshardhakyo vavjati nahi yatrapi samayaha. Even half a moment does not pass in Krishna's abode. There is no passage of time. The deteriorating effect of time is absent in the spiritual world. So, the conception of day and night in the spiritual world is simply for Krishna's pastimes. That's all. They have nothing to do with day and night in terms of measuring time. They don't have a duration of life. They don't have any lifespan in the spiritual world. Everybody lives eternally in the spiritual world. Everything is eternal. Everyone is eternal. There is ever-flowing present. There is no past and there is no future. So this is difficult for us to conceive in our mind with the present experience that we have in this material world. Even for Lord Brahma, living in Brahmaloka, who according to our calculation has got a fantastic long lifespan. Even for him, it is difficult to conceive what is this spiritual time, if I may use that term. There's no time there. But even if we consider Yogamaya arranges for Krishna's pastimes day and night to come and go, still even Brahma cannot conceive what is that day and night. What is eternal time? So Srila Prabhupada explains in one of the purports of the Bhagavad Gita that Brahma's lifespan may seem to be very, very long as compared to our lifespan, but many millions and billions and trillions of Brahmas come and go during the breathing of Mahavishnu, which is like a flash of lightning in the eternal time, in the eternal time scale. In spiritual time scale, the duration of life of Brahma is like a flash of lightning. So, why is all this being described? To help us understand that we have to give up all these material conceptions when we try to understand what is the spiritual world like. Generally, we carry our material conception and try to understand everything relative to our material experience. And this is where the scientists make a mistake when they try to read or understand the descriptions given in the scriptures of the spiritual dimension of existence. Everything they want to understand relative to their present experience. Just like understanding the soul itself. How can you understand the soul relative to this body? Body we have experience, we understand what is this body. But soul is not understood relative to the body. It is totally different from the body. There are only negative descriptions of the soul in terms of the comparison with the body. The body is subject to birth and death, the soul is not subject to birth and death. The body is destructible, the soul is indestructible. The body is manifest and unmanifest, the soul is always existing, always present, always manifest. So like this, the characteristics of the soul. Now when the soul is described as very, very, very tiny, 1 by 10,000 part of the tip of the hair point in size, then somebody may say that science will one day make advancement and then they'll be able to measure 1 by 10,000 part of the tip of the hair point. Then can they measure the dimension of the soul? Bhagavad Gita says, aprameya, cannot measure. Why? Because the soul exists in spiritual dimension. So, just to give an idea the dimension is given, it is not a material dimension. It is not a material particle. It is not perceivable by any material means. You see? So therefore, to understand, to actually get an experience, to realize what is this spiritual dimension, we have to accept a spiritual process. We cannot depend on the various material methods of understanding different material things. Even the methods of understanding what is subtle matter, just like the yogis, the Ashtanga yogis who practice this Ashtanga yoga, mystic yoga system, they are able to manipulate subtle matter, the mind. But even such yogis fail to understand what is spirit soul, what is the spiritual world. Therefore, by negating matter, the impersonalists are able to arrive at a situation where they understand the spirit soul as something non-material. That's their achievement after negating all material varieties. Neti, neti, neti. That's one process of self-realization. If the question is asked, who am I or what am I? Then I am non-material spirit. To realize that, the jnanis, they eliminate all material varieties. And finally, what is their understanding after negating all material varieties? Oh, something non-material, which cannot be described in material terms, cannot be described in material terms. Positively, you cannot describe in material terms. So therefore, they also say indescribable, nirvachaniya, cannot be described in material terms. So, like this, the spiritual dimension or spiritual existence or spiritual reality requires a different method of understanding or realizing. Therefore, when Prabhupada was asked, how do we explain what is the soul to the common people? Prabhupada said it is a matter of realization. It is not something they can understand simply by some explanation, some study, some reading, some tapasya, some yajna, dana, kriya. All this cannot help a person really see or perceive what is the spirit. It's a matter of realization. So this realization is a definite process. It's a spiritual process. So this spiritual process is described here. Lord Brahma is describing to the devatas. Even the devatas are hearing, and they are also actually puzzled as to what is the spiritual world like. Even for the Kumaras, it is a totally different experience. They are actually extremely pleased within their heart. They are experiencing ecstasy, joy, but it is of a different quality. When they saw the Lord, when they smelled the tulsi leaves at the lotus feet of the Lord, when they paid obeisances to Him, when they heard His words, it was a totally different experience. That means it is completely different from all other material experiences they have had in this world. So therefore, we have to adopt, we have to accept this spiritual process. And what is that spiritual process? That is the process of hearing from a realized soul. from a realized soul who has realized this spiritual dimension beyond even the Brahma Jyoti, the experience of the personal abode, the personal form, the personal features of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So that experience every self-realized soul need not have, may not have. Just like the Kumaras. Before they went to the Vaikuntha planet, they had no understanding of what is this Vaikuntha planet. They had no understanding. They were self-realized. They were Brahman realized. But they do not know. They cannot understand. They cannot perceive or conceive or even imagine. Even with all their learning, with all their tapasya, with all their knowledge, they cannot even imagine or conceive what is this spiritual planet like. Self-illuminated, self-sufficient, independent. In the material world, everything is an arrangement. There is an arrangement. Even the Brahmaloka, it is going to be destroyed. It exists for some time. It is created, it is maintained and destroyed. But the spiritual world, none of the planets are maintained or none of the planets are created or destroyed. There is no maintenance there. There is no creation, there is no destruction. So, what is this spiritual planet like? What is the nature of this spiritual Vaikuntha? So, this is a matter of realization. And we have to adopt the process of realization. That is the process of bhakti. So, everything is realized about the spiritual dimension, including our own self. We are also part of that spiritual existence, a spiritual reality, a spirit soul. But even to realize our own self properly as spirit soul, and to realize all the spiritual varieties, ultimately to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have to adopt the process of bhakti. And it's only through bhakti that we can even begin to understand the spiritual dimension. So therefore, when somebody is said to be self-realized without knowledge or understanding of the spiritual planets or the personality of Godhead, that self-realization is technically called self-realization, but it is not self-realization. It is self-realization in the sense that they are able to separate the self from all matter. They don't mistakenly consider anything material or any material variety or any matter to be the self. In that sense, they are self-realized. But they really do not know the self in spiritual terms. Spiritually, still they are ignorant. Spiritually, they are ignorant, even though they are self-realized. So, that spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge, is possible only by the process of bhakti. And that bhakti means one has to actually hear from a devotee, a realized, spiritually realized soul, person. Only then we can actually get this bhakti. So therefore, we should consider how fortunate we are to come in touch with our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, who's not just a self-realized soul like so many others, but is actually Krishna realized. Is Krishna realized. He is a devotee of Krishna. So he realized Krishna. So realization of Krishna means complete realization of Krishna's form, name, qualities, his abode, his devotees, his expansions, his energies, everything. This is a complete realization. This is perfect realization. Only when one realizes Krishna, the realization is complete. The spiritual realization is complete. Otherwise, the realization is always incomplete, imperfect. So therefore, the words of Brahma here, see, Brahma, in the beginning of the creation, even Brahma was not aware of the glories of Vaikuntha. But Brahma was given that knowledge. He was given darshan. And Brahma was able to realize. And therefore, Brahma is now able to describe to the demigods. Otherwise, even it is beyond the understanding of Brahma. Simply knowledge of this material world alone, including all the varieties, material varieties, is not enough. That does not automatically lead to understanding of the spiritual world. It's not extension of the knowledge of the material world. So that we have to remember. And that's how Brahma's description, even for the self-realized souls, is important. Even for the self-realized souls, this knowledge is important. The knowledge that is given in the Bhagavatam, especially describing the spiritual abode, personal abode of the Supreme Personality of God. Stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.